This podcast is sponsored by Success Day, an HR IT consultancy firm.
Hi, I'm Kees, the CEO of Keephub. You're listening to Meet the Mavericks, the HR Tech podcast.
Hi, I'm Jaakke, and this is Meet the Mavericks, an HR Tech podcast by Success Day. In this series, we interview CEOs and founders of new, innovative HR tech solutions. We get to know what drives them and what their products or services are all about. Hopefully, this podcast brings inspiration to the HR community, celebrates entrepreneurial mavericks, and closes the gap between HR and tech. Keephub is a modern software company with 35 employees based in Sassenheim that provide large clients such as Hunkemöller, Hanos, Dirk Supermarkets, and Vitem with a single hub, a modern digital work environment that connects people and allows them to work independently. Today, I have an insightful conversation with Kees, founder of Keephub, about HR tech development and communication within various companies. Welcome to the studio.
Hi, Anne. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Great that you have some time to tell us some wonderful stories. Always when I meet you, you have so many incredible stories to share. But before we go down that route, first of all, who are you and how did you end up becoming the CEO of Keephub?
I'm Kees. I come from a small town called Lisse, born and raised in Noordwijk near the beach. Background in retail. I worked at a retailer and started my own company around more than 30 years now. Ago. And I love retail. I love retailing. I have a wife and two daughters. My daughters are 19 and 21. And every holiday and everything that we are, it's always about retail.
Yeah, shopping.
Shopping. So my daughters love me a little bit because of that. So I always come with new concepts and new formats and et cetera, et cetera. So they think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So always all our holidays are also about retail.
Yeah, going into cities and exploring what's happening.
Going into stores, and then of course seeing a lot of things, how you are treated by people, by employees in stores, and that's really my passion.
I know, because that's how we kind of met as well. Because you actually, for those of you that don't know, but Kees actually also organizes retail safaris, as I would call them, to New York, to other places around the world, to actually give you an experience of what is the latest in retail customer service.
Yeah.
But that's on one end super interesting when you are a retailer, but in particular you and I connected because you're also interested in what type of retailers are out there, how are they treating their employees, how can things be either more efficient or more engaging, or how do you create great places to work. So that is a lot of different brands that we're going to talk about that you have some insights on. But first of all, let's talk a little bit about your own company. So what's Keephub?
Keephub is we will call it a communication or work platform. We say it's like work starts here. So you want to have, let's say, one gateway to all applications that employees need to work with.
Yeah.
It's kind of a struggle within a lot of organizations because there's mostly between 10 and 15 different apps that employees need to work with.
Yeah.
It's like disaster because there's like 10 different passwords and logins and
your email and Slack and
it's really
some
difficult.
portal.
Yeah, but also it's like a HR system. There's a learning solution. There's a onboarding solution. There is your pay slip. There is a task management. Yeah, well, you name them. And we want to be the easy gateway to all those applications to make work easy and to make the access to those applications as easy as possible. Yeah.
So if I would put it in simple words, it's almost like an umbrella. You just have one screen where you log in and then you can access the rest.
It's like Keephub. It's like Keephub and staying up to date. And then Keep in the hub is like the access to all the applications, make that as easy as possible as well.
So you've been in this space, as you said, well, for 30 years you've been active in retail and you've seen a lot of trends and you've seen a lot of things happening in that space. Now, today in particular, we're going to talk about employees, not necessarily about customer service. We're also going to talk a little bit more in the alley, more or less, of communication, because with the variation in generations, with the different tooling, it's becoming quite a complex arena. Yeah. So first of all, latest retail safaris. What have you seen, or what is worth sharing in that aspect?
I think we did a safari last year to Berlin.
Yeah.
Which was about corporate responsibility, sustainability and corporate responsibility. We try to look for that. So it's not that we say you need to find this in Berlin. but Berlin was like a predefined city where we would go to. And then we will find retailers that have interesting concepts around corporate social responsibility. That could be in the relationship to the way in which they build their stores, but it's also in the way in which they engage with their employees. So, for instance, we went to Patagonia. And there is like a lot of freedom for the employee to decide what to do, for instance, with percentage of the turnover in a specific store. And they can decide on what good cause for a better world or a better life for a specific type of people. They can spend that money without headquarters saying where to spend it on.
You're kidding. So they're getting like a percentage of the revenue?
1% of the revenue of that store. And all the people working in that store, they decide on how it's being spent.
How cool is that?
That's super cool.
And is that done like seriously or?
That's seriously, yeah. So we met a guy, he is originally from Patagonia in Chile. He's studying in Berlin. So he was kind of our host in the store. So he worked at Patagonia in Chile, went to study in Berlin, and works in the store from Patagonia as a second job. And he is totally passionate about Patagonia because of this.
I can imagine.
So like having a cause or having a feeling that this is a brand that tries to distinguish itself in the world makes him want to work there. And maybe it's not the best paying employer, but it's their cause. And we see it a little bit the same, for instance, if you go to Lush, it's kind of the same. It's like
a soap company, right?
It's a soap company. It's also about sustainability in terms of the relationship. It's in terms of inclusivity, in terms of being part of, like a culture. So the culture is more important for work than just like the work itself.
And what does Lush do? I mean, do they also have like this percentage of revenue?
It's not a percentage. They have something called a random act of kindness. So every employee has the ability to give something for free every day that they work towards a colleague or an employee which they want to make happy.
And like a product of Lush?
A product, any product. So it doesn't matter what it costs. So if I would engage with you in the store and you are my colleague and I see you a little bit sad, I can make you happy by giving you a bath bomb or maybe a wellness treatment or whatever.
Wow, that must, that's like
no questions asked.
A lot of trust goes into that, right? Because if you go and work at Lush with your buddy, you can go every other day. You can give each other like a soap bar.
Yeah, so that's trust.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
So and I kind of like those kind of
that's different.
It's different thinking. Exactly. Yeah, and that's what we try to find. So sustainability is not just about doing something good for the worldwide, the Earth, for instance, but it's also about sustainability in terms of relationships, in terms of connections, in terms of doing something good for somebody else. And I feel that around the world where I come, I try to search for those kind of companies that try to put a little bit more emphasis on that.
On different things.
Yeah, this is a little bit holistic. And sometimes it's also a little bit in, I call it a little bit in smaller items, such as lots of software is being released within retail organizations. And mostly the employees are forgotten in which they need to work with the software. And what I also sometimes see is retail organizations that put a lot of emphasis in attracting the employees in developing the software. So it doesn't really need to be the best software created, but it's adopted the best.
Because they actually are seeking for more engagement, more buy-in, and they actually involve them. And what are examples there that you find extraordinary or different?
My top one favorite retailer in that reference is Shoe. It's like a UK-based shoe retailer.
What do they do?
They are a multi-brand shoe retailer. Nothing special. If you would walk by on Oxford Street, you might pass a store by because it's not interested. But all the things that they do in the store in making you feel engaged as a customer from the perspective of the employee, that's impeccable.
So tell me, what
do
they do?
Let's say you want to make a reservation for a shoe. You don't pay for it. You just want to have it put aside.
So you've seen it online.
Same as what we did at Hunkemuller.
Click and reserve.
Check and reserve, or click and reserve.
Yeah, okay.
So it's like a 20-minute promise. If you reserve something on your phone, you're on the go in the subway or whatever, on the go. Within 20 minutes, you will have confirmation on your phone that the item has been set apart. And within that setting apart, it's been checked on quality. It's been checked if it's like a left and a right shoe. Everything attached to that. And within 20 minutes, everybody not doing that within 20 minutes as an employee,
is fired.
Almost. That's what they explained.
No.
But it's like, I think within 5 minutes, you will have it on your phone, the confirmation. It's been set apart.
And why is that so unique? Because of what?
Because it's not like that it's something that they need to do. It's something that they want to do. So they want to have an ultimate customer experience. And this is for check and reserve, but the same they will do with click and collect. The same they will do with a shoe which you have in your hand, which you want to fit. There's like a 1-minute promise. And you will have the other shoe in your hand to fit within 1 minute in the store. And there's 25,000 pairs of shoes in the stockroom.
Well, that is a good promise, because sometimes you do. I mean, some of the listeners might not be as experienced as you are in retail, so I'm going to try to explain it in normal language.
But it's like really. So it's
but
like
you're
everybody's
going into
focused on the
fit,
KPIs.
You want to fit like a couple of stores. You want
shoes,
to get a couple of shoes. You want to fit, and normally you have to wait for somebody to kind of become available, and then look at your shoe, and then take your shoes to the back office, and start looking for them, and then they come back 5 minutes later with a whole stack of shoes, and they have a promise that goes much faster in their store. Yeah,
within 1 minute.
Within a minute.
Within 60 seconds. Yeah. And everybody's doing that. So everybody's driven for the ultimate experience.
Why do you think, what are they doing? Now, let me ask this question. How do they get the employees so engaged with that rule?
To make them understand that they're in there for the business. Of course, they're in there to make money.
Yeah.
They know that if they wait too long, people might tend to walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially in busy streets.
Yeah.
Take Oxford Street. There's maybe 25 different shoe stores that sell the same brand.
Fast.
If you walk outside, you go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And they want to, let's say, make the customer also happy that they will come back.
Yeah, I can understand why they want to do this.
Yeah.
But how do they get their employees to this level of speed or engagement?
To have them attached to the reasons why they want to achieve this as a business.
So understanding the why.
Understanding the why. Involve them in the development of how can we make this happen? Because it's not only people's work, but it's also software attached to that. So if you want to make the software to help you work as good for you as an employee, you want to be involved in how it's being created. And that's what they do really closely.
Okay.
So the people from headquarters also involved in developing the software, even the software developers, they are also on the shop floor to help create the software.
And that is
and
a big
they
difference.
Listen. So the voice of the employees is heard.
Yeah.
That's a really important. That's what I see everywhere. Software is, of course, important.
Yeah.
But it's not the most important part.
The important part is clearly engagement, buy-in,
and building
buy-in with the
input. If it's like a store person, or it could be somebody in a warehouse or whatever. But it's like you need to have them involved.
All right. So far we've gotten some great examples. So most people will be getting excited for more examples. So you have a couple of more to share.
I think that we have a shared experience within Hunkemuller. We did kind of the same things. It's also how we started from an intranet to an engagement part of the app, where you need to explain to people why it's important that if somebody returns an item to the store, that this is not a nuisance. And we also know that there are rules attached which were not really positive for the employee, because if you say we're going to distract this return from your day's turnover, you need to change that. You also need to change communication around that. You need to make them aware of the fact that if there is a customer coming into the store, that this is traffic, that you can use that traffic. And that requires lots of explanation.
Kees, I have to stop you here, because I think we're going to lose so many people with this technology, this tech talk. Because when we look at the different examples of, let's say, employee engagement, when you look at great employment, great places to work, So we talked a little bit about companies that give a percentage of the revenues for people to
That's
invest,
yeah.
to actually give something to your colleague, a product from the store. What else have you seen that you think would be a good role model for other companies to look into?
I think one of our other clients is called Dirk. It's a supermarket chain. They have a program in which they want to make their employees more aware about their role in being more sustainable in their personal life. It's also something that they are not required to do, but they feel that they need to kind of educate their employees to be more sustainable.
Yeah, not only on the business floor.
Not only on the business, maybe you don't even expect it from this kind of discount supermarket, but they focus really on their employees and making them more aware. I think that that's something that really feels good. And I can imagine that there's like 85% of the people working there are students. They have a temporary job. Even those 85% of their people, they want to make more aware about their footprint in the world.
Absolutely.
And I really think that that's something that's amazing.
Good example. So we have a couple of examples in what you can see in the latest retailers are putting effort into the engagement of their staff.
Yeah.
When you look back more or less on the development in HR tech and HR tech tooling, what are some of the trends that you currently see and where do you think they will be heading? Do you have some views on it?
I think the most important, let's say the level that we come from and where we are, everything starts on mobile. That's something I think is really, it's almost unthinkable that you have a solution that's not starts on mobile. I think that the people that are using that technology are more and more into viewing. It's like how would we call them, TikTok, Insta, social way of communication.
Yeah.
And then still you need to bring that, if you talk to retail, into a domain in which you also need to do a lot of things. There's still
processes to follow,
process to fulfill.
To
you need to do it. You need to tick a box. You need to fulfill a task. You need to put something on the shelf, and you need to show proof that you've done that. And how you combine those things in making it also a little bit kind of fun.
Yeah,
that's where you need to focus on. That's a big impact, and I think AI is a really big differentiating factor at this moment, of which is not really clear of in what direction it will be. Could be in the creation of content, in which you can generate automated flows for your onboarding or for learning or for maybe the history of the company. But it could also be in how quick can I find things that I need. So that is like mostly automated searches that are taking place from an AI perspective. As soon as I can find the things that I need to do my job properly as quickly as possible.
Do you think, because I know that you also look outside of Europe for inspiration, and I know that you've been also to Asia and so on, do you think that in stores we will move to a model without shop floor employees?
I'm not sure about that. So I've seen a couple of those concepts.
Like, what can you call them?
Amazon Go, of course, is the one that we know the most. We see them moving away a little bit more. I see that there is concepts in which people are less needed, employees are less needed. For instance, in terms of payment, there's also possibilities now that you pay with your hand palm, for instance.
With the
checkout. So there's, and I also think in finding information about products. I think a lot of those things are being digitized. Can it be done completely without employees? I'm not really convinced to the full. Won't say it will not happen because maybe there are other things that people would think it will not happen, but it will change. And it needs to change because there's less people available to be on the shop floor, so you need to change. But will it change as it being unmanned store? Maybe not completely, but we will get a little bit closer than with less people. And that means automate your processes. Sure. So we have one customer that operates in Uzbek, which is also a supermarket. What I think what's really interesting is if you divide the world a little bit into blocks, you could say that, let's say, Europe and the US are focused on US-based companies like Google and Meta, all the likes. If you go to, let's say, Uzbek, which is a little bit closer to China and Russia, you will see a lot of software from Russia and from China. So they work with Yandex, or they work with WeChat, or they work with Telegram, and they have a completely different angle. So I like to look at those solutions as well, because it helps you develop your own product as well. Yeah, so if you look at WhatsApp, for instance, they have, I think, groups of 10,000 people. Yeah, within Telegram, you can create a group of 100,000 people, and they are chatting with each other. And that's also the way in which they communicate within retail organizations.
Yeah, because one of the questions that I actually have for you is that when you come from the retail landscape, and both you and I have a passion for this domain, it's quite innovative compared to other industries. So what could other industries, a bit of a trick question, but what could other industries maybe learn from retail communications and the innovations that are happening in that space? Also, when you look at a great place to work, what are like industries like healthcare or potentially hospitality? What could they take on board from this?
I think that what my experience is in retail is that it's like there's an enormous speed. So things need to be done almost instantly. So I won't say that is always good, but from the fact that it needs to be done really quick, you can learn how to make your message resonate, or how do I reach all those people at the same moment or really quickly. That has changed a lot of my thinking in the 30 years. So and that's also sometimes when I go into a different vertical, for instance, healthcare. You sometimes see that the speed is at a lower level, but the fact that I come from that retail background makes sure that I can deliver it as quickly as possible. Even if it's not necessarily, you can adhere that to that vertical, and that can also help the vertical. Because if you look at things like
what
onboarding...
do you mean with a vertical?
A vertical is like healthcare, other industry.
Industry.
So they could be for onboarding people or learning them things or getting feedback from the floor. It's much quicker, but you also need to be sure that headquarters can also then adapt to that quickness. Because if somebody is responding, you also need to do something with that.
Yeah.
And in retail, everybody is focused on it needs to be done now because turnover is lagging behind or there's something else, there's a problem. And you see that in other verticals like healthcare or logistics, it's a little bit more slower.
Okay, so kind of recapping on the examples that we just mentioned about Lush and Patagonia and about Dirk and some other companies, Shoe that you mentioned, wonderful examples, I think. What have you noticed in the trends when it comes to great employment or creating great places to work? What have you seen in a trend in the latest, let's say, months, years that is different than in the past? What employees are seeking?
One of the things that stands out is authenticity.
Yeah.
So it's like doing something that is really for you. Autonomy, so freedom to decide to make decisions on your own. That's something that I see a lot coming back. I think that those two are the most important.
Most important one. And authenticity, I assume, also from their leaders, right? Is wanting to be you. It's like the leaders, but it's also the brand itself. So it's like maybe even more than the leader. The leader is the example. He needs to adhere what the brand stands for, what the culture is, and then so it's even beyond the leader. So it's about a brand being authentic, a brand being authentic, the leader being authentic within that brand.
Yes.
And you as the employee wanting to be authentic as well.
Being part of that authenticity. And that's the reason why you choose that brand to work for that brand.
Yeah. But it also means from a communication perspective, and this is what I see when I talk to a lot of leaders and also CHROs, that over the last years, I've noticed a trend that internal communication has become part of HR in a couple of companies in that domain. Is that they're actually seeking for how do we communicate, because we want to have personalized communication, but if it's personalized, you need to take in regards the various generations, you need to take into regards the various movements like LGBTQ, how do you integrate that? besides the autonomy and the authenticity, how do you then cater for that? How do you do that as an organization?
To connect as good as possible to make them and make the people that you want to communicate with part of your communication. Maybe even let them make the communication. So be a facilitator instead of creator.
That's a good one.
And that's because they come up with their own within the culture that you want to achieve, and so if you give the freedom within the culture what you want to create, if you attach them into creating that same culture, they will come up with ideas that you will not have yourself.
Yeah, and that sounds simple.
It's not simple.
It's of course not simple, but it's actually quite a good idea, because most companies have like a communication team set up, and they're went to university and they studied this particular, I would say, expertise. But you're saying, have various employees engage in this and actually have them communicate. So that's one.
Yeah.
What else would be worthwhile looking into?
Being a connector.
What does that mean?
Connector. So if it's like HR and internal communications, the domain in which you work is much broader. So sometimes it can be really helpful to talk to other departments within a company and also attach or connect them within what you want to achieve.
And then when you look at the platforms, well, personally, I find it sometimes so old-fashioned how we tend to communicate still with email.
Yeah.
But everybody has their own preference, right? Like I just left you a little voice message. I don't prefer to type it into WhatsApp. Somebody else likes to do it in a different shape or form. How do you deal with all those different platforms? Do you need to instruct, like in this company, you can only communicate via Slack?
Our default set in communicating with frontline employees is get rid of email. So, and it's not that we say you cannot email, but you have to redefine in which, how do we get this message to this employee? Because if email is your default setting, with everybody in CC
with default,
or VCC.
You mean that's the standard way of working?
That's the standard way of working.
Yeah.
So if you keep on doing that, then you will never get into the habit of the new employee.
So is it also that companies need to learn how to communicate, like kids are communicating or teenagers are communicating on Snap or on TikTok, instead of trying them to engage with WhatsApp and email?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's a revolution.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's also difficult because sometimes you have like a definite set of rules in which companies tend to communicate, of which email is mostly still one of the regular rules.
But also the whole, I listen to a lot of people always saying, well, we're not allowed from IT or cybersecurity or data security or privacy or legislation or whatever. And meaning that when you're in the company, you communicate quite old-fashioned. And when you leave the building, then you're on all your other devices doing your own stuff.
Yeah, and that needs to be more aligned.
Yeah, so how does that work then for companies? So if you had a vision and everything would be possible, what would you create?
What I like the most is attract people from, let's say, a little bit older age, but also young age, maybe 15, 16, 17-year-olds, maybe even 14-year-olds. To learn how they communicate and also connect them to your HR department or to your internal communications department so that they can help you also adapt towards the future communication.
So one is then from a content perspective, but also then from a platform perspective.
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the close of this podcast. And one of the questions that I have for each of my guests is what is a product or service coming from the HR tech world, maybe not only HR, but just in the tech space, that you think we can learn things from or can get inspiration from?
Yeah. For me, that would be WeChat. So, and I know it is from the perspective as a consumer, but it's also really adaptable to everything that you do as an employee.
Can you explain what it is, WeChat?
WeChat is like our WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, finding your new partner, doing your shopping in one app.
Yeah, paying with it as
Payments,
well. Right? Yeah.
Everything is in one solution.
And we've got it here in the western side.
It's like 5, 6 or 7 different applications. Yeah. That's I think where I look the most at. Yeah. So China is not the best looked country at if you look at privacy.
Yeah.
But in terms of the way in which they develop things, WeChat for me is a really good example of which I see a lot of things that can adapt to HR and HR tech.
Okay. And then final question from all of the retail scope. And this is cherry picking for you and might be a little bit difficult. But what would be a brand that you think everybody should check out just from the employee perspective? So from a customer service perhaps or an employee perspective, but that you would say, if you go there, you can experience actually what the effect is of being a great employer because you notice it in the customer service of the employees or the happiness of the employees.
If I can mention one, I would say Lush.
Okay, I'm going to check them out.
Yeah, ask store staff, and they will explain you the whole culture without having
without
to
a
look
script
or whatever. It's not scripted.
It's not scripted.
I've seen it around the world. So either if I'm in New York or if I'm in London, I'm in Berlin, I'm in Amsterdam or in Utrecht, story is always the same.
Interesting.
It's really interesting how they do that.
I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to probably contact the CHRO to see what she has been doing. Thanks so much for sharing all the inspiration across the world and for your time. Really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope I can enjoy joining you on the next retail safari.
Always a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kees. Thank you so much for listening to Meet the Mavericks, an HR Tech podcast. For more information about this episode, check out the show notes. And don't forget to listen to our next episode.